Every year, someone finishes as the RB1, and it's almost never the guy that was drafted first. These are the players outside of their elite tier, but every single one has a real shot to finish #1 at their position. You know what's funny? Drake London averaged 13 targets per game down the stretch, but it came in the slowest offense in football, so people dismissed it. It's not crazy to say that London could be the wide receiver 1 overall, and he's hiding in plain sight, still on the board in round 2. Let's sit with this for a second. 100 catches in an extremely slow-paced offense. And he's still cooked. Most guys need a scheme change to unlock their ceiling. London just needed a tempo change. Because this wasn't just a hot streak, it was volume meeting his talent at the exact right time for fantasy owners last year. He's not just padding his stats on these screens, these short routes. He's absolutely dominating over the middle, and he's beating people over the top. Timing routes, third downs, that's the stuff that travels no matter who the quarterback is. Say what you want about the Michael Penix pick, but he throws with rhythm, and you know who eats on rhythm throws? Drake London. He's proved it. I get it. Second round wide receivers don't usually come with this type of ceiling, but this isn't a breakout projection. This is a breakout that's already happened. You just don't want to admit it because of what's on top of the helmet. A team that has really not been great for us for some time through the air. I think what bothers me the most is people are acting like London's about to take this huge leap this year, but he already took it. You don't post wide receiver 1 stat lines in a bottom tier offense unless you're already different. We always say we want these target hogs at wide receiver, these guys with huge upside, but then when we find one, we act like it's too good to be true. It's not. So here's what you do. You draft him, and you draft him consistently. End of round 2, beginning of round 3, I don't care. This one's a complete gift, and honestly, the easiest dark horse wide receiver 1 I've ever seen. There's some alpha, but if you want some more, for a limited time, I'm gonna give you access to my full draft guide for free. Rankings, sleepers, busts, cheat sheets. Go to fantasyaccelerator.com or just hit the first link in the description. Again, you can get full access to my draft guide for free until week 1, but I'm not promising that that deal is gonna stay open all summer. All right, so we talked about the wide receiver 1 overall that no one sees coming, but the QB 1, that might even be more disrespectful. I don't think people realize how fast we forgot Dak Prescott. He was a QB1 before the injury last year. The market just let go, and it makes zero sense. He's throwing to CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens, but he's being drafted outside the top 100. This is one of the most obvious QB1 overall dark horses I've seen in years. But let's break this down. Dak averaged 38 pass attempts per game last year. That's before the hamstring tear. And this offense, still an elite pass volume offense. One that's anchored by CeeDee Lamb, who led the team with a 32.3% target share when healthy last year. And they just added George Pickens, a guy who's averaged 15 plus yards per catch in every season of his career. You don't bring in a vertical weapon like that unless you plan to let it rip. And yet Dak is being drafted like he never healed and like we've never seen the ceiling that we have. But here's what's sticking with me. The last full season where Dak had a clean bill of health and a wide receiver 1 he could trust, he finished top 8 in fantasy points per game 4 out of 5 seasons before that hamstring injury. That's not a fluke. And I get it, people were worried about Lamb soaking up everything, and that's not a bad thing, but that's also why Dak is viable. Because when you have a guy that can win short, win intermediate, win deep, but win post-catch, and now you add a true vertical threat in Pickens, who leads the league in 20-plus yard target rate, that's not a crowded room, that's a blueprint for spiked weeks for the quarterback. And you want to talk about play volume? Dallas had 100 more dropbacks than Pittsburgh last year. Pickens just walked into a high-octane passing script, and Dak, he's the engine. And you look at the ADP, you're paying quarterback 15 prices, and you're getting a top 8 per game upside. I would argue you're getting QB1 overall upside, and people are just scared off by this injury. It's really funny. You can see everyone chasing this late round upside at every other position, but when it shows up at quarterback, we get wildly conservative. It's insane. Dak already has top 10 fantasy seasons in 4 of the last 5 healthy years, and he's got the wide receiver 1, he's got the deep threat attached to that wide receiver 1, and he's got one of the most pass-heavy setups in the entire league. I don't get it. We just get uncomfortable with betting on some of these like older veteran quarterbacks or just veteran players in general, when realistically, this is like a clear story, a clear path to upside. So target them late as much as possible. You're gonna get access to this pass-heavy system. You're gonna get access to CeeDee Lamb and Pickens ceiling just by default. That's not insurance though. That's just firepower that you're gonna get from this guy. So when the dust settles on draft day, that's how you finish with a QB1 overall ceiling, and you didn't have to pay for it. All right, you've seen the late round quarterback who could finish at number 1. Now meet the tight end who's already done it. What if I told you there's one tight end who already gets wide receiver 1 volume, but he's going in in round 9 with no number 2 option in sight on his new team. So this isn't just hype. Evan Engram pushing for tight end 1 overall is more likely than you think. Let's talk this through. After week 9, Engram had a 27% target rate, and that's not just solid for a tight end, that's wide receiver 1 level target earning. And now he's in a room with no clear wide receiver 2 behind Courtland Sutton, no established target hog behind him, so really no reason that he can't dominate targets again. And you're not buying a sleeper here, you're buying a tight end who was already functioning like a top 5 guy before in the second half of the season last year. So the more I sit with it, the clearer this one gets. This isn't a case of maybe he earns a bigger role. He's already being called the Joker by Sean Payton. So the opportunity gets even cleaner here, if we're being honest with ourselves. Because behind Sutton, there's a ton of question marks here. What are they going to do when they need to like draw something up that's a little bit safe, something over the middle of the field, or just they need a first down? That's going to be Engram. Tight end is actually pretty simple in fantasy. You want to try and get guys that are just freak athletes. It's about snaps, it's about routes, it's about consistency. Engram has all 3 of those things. There's a reason the guy finished as a top 5 tight end down the stretch. It wasn't luck, it was volume. And now you can get him in the 9th round in maybe an even better volume situation. Because here's what's crazy. If a wide receiver had this usage, we'd be losing our minds. But because this is tight end, we just forget for some reason. We're forgetting that he's going to be scripted targets and that we can draft a guy here that we already have actual evidence of elite usage and elite production at a position that doesn't just happen by accident. So take Evan Engram in round 9 and then you don't have to touch the position again. He has a clear path to being the team's number 2 option, and this isn't a breakout. It's just carryover that no one's noticing. And if you wait too long, you're going to have to trade for him or just blow your entire fab budget to get him. But real quick, before I give you my dark horse running back 1, if you want my top 150 rankings for free, there's a link in the description. That's what I'm using in every draft this year. But if your league gets it first, you're probably cooked. All right, wide receiver, QB, tight end, all covered. But the running back with running back 1 overall upside, he's the most explosive one on here and probably the most doubted. What if I told you one of the most efficient running backs in the league ran for 900 yards, caught another 600, but in 2025 fantasy football, people still don't trust him? You're staring at a potential running back 1 overall finish for Achane, and it's like none of you even care. This is where it gets real. When Tua was on the field last year, Achane averaged 22.6 PPR points per game. That's not just solid, that's league winning. But here's where the tension comes in. His ADP sits around the top 15 or so because people are scared. They're scared of injuries, they're scared of the volatility, and yeah, they're scared of what people think is more of like a boom or bust profile. But the deeper you go, the more this feels like just mispriced ceiling. But first, let's talk about the regression that everyone wants to discuss. The breakaway runs dried up in 2024. That part is definitely real. The long touchdown sprints that made him famous as a rookie, they just weren't there. But the role, that didn't change. 290 opportunities. And he still racked up over 1,500 total yards. That's not regression, that's proof of durability to me, within some volatility for sure. The coaching staff isn't treating this like a committee, they're treating it like a feature role with insurance. You don't bring in Jalen Wright unless you're committing to the guy in front of him, and everything points to Achane being that guy. You don't accidentally lead all running backs in receptions unless the system is built around it. And in Miami, when Tua plays, the running back targets absolutely spike. With him, 20 points per game. Without him, 7 points per game. So yeah, Tua's health matters. But that's already priced in. What isn't priced in is what happens if all the pieces come together and they stay together. Because people say they want upside in round 2, but then when it stares them in the face, they flinch. They chase these volume grinders, the safe 14-point guys who won't lose you weeks, but Achane, he can win you weeks. Because here's the kicker, even in a down year, he ran for 900, caught for 600 while dealing with an injury, a volatile offense, and no real stretch run to boost his numbers. So here's what I'm doing. If I go wide receiver early, Achane is the pivot that I want at running back next. Even in the mid-second, he's still on my board because if Tua stays upright and the coaching staff continues to lean on what's already worked, you're holding a top 3 running back with league-winning speed who's already done it, even if the box scores didn't feel pretty at times. You're not drafting Achane for comfort, you're drafting him to break your league, because if he hits, he really hits.